All right. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are today. And thank you for joining me today for this GrafanaCONline talk. So my name is Anthony Woods, and today I'm going to be talking about worldPing. So a little about me before we start. So I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO at Grafana Labs, and I'm speaking today from Perth in Western Australia. So shout out to all the other Australians that are listening. So worldPing is a product that I'm very passionate about. I was obviously heavily involved in the development of the original project, and I believe that it's a product that has a lot of potential. So I'm really excited with some of the new things that are going on. So in the talk today, we're going to start with a kind of an overview of what worldPing is and why you would want to use it. We're going to have a quick look back at the history of worldPing, and then we're going to dive into what's important. So the future of worldPing, also known as worldPing v2. All right, so let's get started. So jumping right into what worldPing is. So when we built worldPing, we built it as a network performance and availability monitoring tool, and we still think that that's something that's really important that brings the capability that users want. So the idea behind the platform is to provide an external view of how services are performing. So looking from the outside, looking into services and applications, and being able to monitor them and understand how they're performing. This is great for ensuring uptime, so knowing when your service is down, and being able to maintain your SLAs and report on your SLAs. And it's also a platform that provides deep insight into performance issues and downtime. So we focus, because it's an external view, we focus on the network performance data that we can collect and kind of understanding how your applications are performing from that external point of view. So there's lots of common terms that are used for this type of monitoring. So we have black box synthetics, API tests, ping tests. So there's quite a few. Me personally, I like the black box monitoring term. So I've really come to prefer the term black box monitoring when talking about worldPing. When it comes to monitoring applications or services, there's really two approaches. So the black box approach or the white box approach. And so these terms, when we talk about them, the box that we're referring to is the application or the service itself. So with a white box approach, the box is open or transparent. We can see into it. We can see what's happening inside of an application. So with this type of monitoring, which is very common, you can get really great deep insights into how your application is performing. So you can understand specific components, how they're working. You can understand how components are interacting with each other. And when you do see issues, you can isolate them to specific functions, specific components. You can really drill down into a very high level or low level within your applications. However, to make this work, it's up to the developers to instrument the applications and make sure that the applications themselves, are emitting all of the desired metrics or logs or traces, that you need to capture the behavior with the sufficient level of detail that you want to have. And so that level of detail that you gain from your application monitoring, is really only limited by the amount of instrumentation that you add to your application. It's not unlimited. You can't record everything because you'll end up with a situation where your application is spending more time measuring things than it is actually doing anything. But there's certainly a huge amount of information that you can gather from your application. Additionally, as well as having the requirement of having to instrument your applications, the white box approach, even though it's great at providing insight of what your application is seeing, it can't give you a complete view of what your users are experiencing. And so this is where the black box monitoring comes in. So for black box monitoring, we treat applications or services as dark, black, closed boxes. So we don't know what's happening inside. We can't see it. The only way that we can monitor or interact with the service is by sending requests and analyzing the responses that come back. So with this type of monitoring, it's really great for doing simple tests of if the service is up or not, but it also can do a lot more, especially when it comes to network requests and network services, there's a number of stages in the request process where things go wrong or slow down. So we have our DNS lookup, we've got establishing our connections, negotiating TLS and SL, sending the request, waiting for a response to come back, and then being able to download that whole response. And so there's lots of different issues that can happen, different problems for your services, and they'll affect these stages differently. And so by having that kind of level of insight, you still, when things do go wrong, you might not know the specific component, but there are certainly a large range of kind of failure modes that you will have a sufficient amount of information to be able to troubleshoot and diagnose. What's really great about the black box monitoring is that it doesn't require any instrumentation or any changes to your application. Anything that's on the network, and handling network-based requests, you can use a black box monitoring approach to start monitoring it without having to make any changes or set up anything else. So this really is, kind of, if you don't have any monitoring, this is, certainly the easiest way to start getting some insights and being able to monitor your services and applications and make sure that they're healthy and kind of understand how well they're performing. Even if you do have monitoring, this is still a great, additional set of insights that you can gain that really does help, understand how your application is performing from the user perspective, and kind of being able to, make sure that it's that everything is working as it should be. So, one of the things that that you need for doing the black box monitoring is really just that tool, that agent that can send those requests and record the results. And this is really what worldPing is. So by design, the worldPing platform monitors services from dozens of locations around the world. We do this for a few main reasons. One is that the internet is it's a very big place, and lots of things can go wrong that may only affect certain areas in certain regions. For example, you may see undersea fiber cuts that haven't happened for a while, but we have seen them in the past. That lead to network congestion or entire regions being offline. And by having that monitoring visibility from lots of different regions around the globe, these regional-based problems that pop up, you have a better chance of being able to troubleshoot and diagnose them. There's nothing more difficult than having a user reporting a problem and not being able to see the same error or experience the same results for yourself, simply because it's a regional-based issue, and the only way that you can get the same kind of experience that the user is having is by sending requests from the same region that the user is requesting from. Another good reason for the kind of global footprint is really around adoption we see of geo-based routing of requests and kind of distributing workloads around the globe. So we may see requests that are coming from US-based users may be getting handled by completely different data centers to requests that are originating from Europe. So by monitoring from many different locations, you can ensure that all of your applications are working and all of your data centers are working. And additionally, you can also ensure requests are actually being routed correctly. So this leads into reason number 2, which is around monitoring performance from every region. So whether your applications are globally distributed or if you still just have a single server, you still need to have visibility into the performance of your service from all of the regions that your users are in. You want to make sure that every user is having a good experience, and you're not leaving large subsets of your user base feeling unloved and experiencing poor performance. And so in addition to the global footprint of probes that are provided, users can also deploy their own private probes. So this is especially useful when you want to monitor services that are on an internal network. So things that are behind the firewall that aren't exposed to the public internet, you can run a probe locally and be able to integrate that into the worldPing platform and have it monitor those internal services. And you can also use this approach for doing inside-out kind of monitoring. So going and deploying a probe in your own network and have it monitor services that are outside. This is really useful when for instance, you're relying on third-party vendors for a specific kind of capability, whether it's for your application, or perhaps you want to have your IT team use it for monitoring specific services that your employees need. So you might deploy a probe within your office building. Not really that important right now with everyone working from home, but the capabilities is definitely nice. So once users start coming back into offices, being able to make sure that the services that they're dependent on are available and working, just to support them, and also help manage the SLAs and kind of report on those over time as well. So at Grafana Labs, we're obviously a metrics and kind of visualizations, dashboarding company. So when we built out worldPing, it was obvious that we wanted to, make it a metric-based platform. And so the black box monitoring approach that we've taken, has us collecting key performance and availability metrics and storing them in time series databases so that you can visualize them and show graphs of them over time. So this really helps give you that great visibility into how your applications are performing, both just how they're performing right now, but also giving you that historical perspective as well. And so this is really kind of key to understanding how your applications kind of perform over time. You can look at the trends and see what your peak periods are, when you might need to scale up or scale down. You can kind of correlate those peak periods that you have during whether it's the day or the week with how that affects the performance on your application, and kind of use that to kind of manage capacity and understand when you need to scale things up so that you can avoid any outages that you might have. And obviously the historical data is also great for being able to generate those SLA and SLO reports that are really important for understanding how well your applications are going at meeting the service level obligations that they have. And so as I mentioned earlier, best results when you're monitoring applications is when you have both black box and white box monitoring to give you that full end-to-end coverage. And once you've got this, Grafana is really shines in helping you take that data and use it to get better insights into what's happening inside your environment. So with the power of Grafana, you can take the data that's been collected by worldPing and combine that with other monitoring data that you may have coming from other systems, whether they're whether it's the same time series database, whether it's something different, whether it's coming from a cloud provider like CloudWatch or Stackdriver. You can combine that data with your monitoring data from worldPing to get that end-to-end visibility into how your services are performing. All right, so let's dive into the history of worldPing. So worldPing was launched 5 years ago, so back at Monitorama in 2015. So those of you that watched the keynote yesterday would have seen Raj share a lovely photo of me asleep in front of my laptop. And so this photo was actually taken at Monitorama. So it was the night before we were launching, and I was up all night dealing with issues on the platform, trying to get everything up and running for the launch the next morning. It was a very long night, but thankfully everything got sorted out and we had everything working in time for launching the product. Definitely wasn't an enjoyable experience, but I'm certainly glad that we got everything working. So worldPing was the first product that we launched at Grafana Labs, even though at the time we weren't called Grafana Labs. Back then we were still called RainTank. But the product itself, even though it's isn't the main thing that we do as a company, it's been really kind of instrumental in driving some of the kind of key features in both Grafana and our Grafana Cloud platform. And so throughout its life, worldPing has seen some pretty significant changes. So when we built worldPing, we wanted to use Graphite as a time series database for storing all of our metrics. At the time, Graphite was the most popular data source among Grafana users. The Graphite query editor was significantly easier to use, and the UI really made it very easy for new users and less technical users to get started and start building dashboards. And so we really loved that model. And so though we wanted Graphite, from the user kind of experience perspective, we also needed something that would be scalable and support multi-tenant approach for time series. And so we knew that the open source Graphite web wouldn't be able to do that. And so we started looking at different options. And when we started, I think we started with Influx as a backend with Graphite kind of API sitting in front. But we quickly kind of outgrew that. We then moved on to KairosDB with its Cassandra-based backend because we thought that would be much easier to scale. But it only took a couple of months before we ran into scaling issues with that as well. And it was then we realized that we needed to kind of build our own backend that meted our needs. So we never really set out to go into the business of building time series databases, but we did, and it worked out very well. So we put effort in and we started building out our metric tank platform. So we got that up and running and deployed that for our worldPing, and then continued with that, and it became the basis of our Grafana Cloud platform. And it's still used today heavily for our Grafana Cloud customers that are using Graphite, and works very well. It's grown a lot over the 5 years, but it's really turned out to be a really reliable and great platform with a great level of performance, and we continue to leverage that today. To support the growth of the platform that we had, we also had to rewrite the probe, the kind of collector that we have that gathers all the data. So the original one was written in Node, and we rewrote that using Golang. This was just around performance, that we needed to be able to kind of run it reliably and make sure that the measurements that we're collecting were accurate. And we're still using that probe today. Excuse me. To support the growth that I guess that we have our customers, and just kind of keep pace with all of the changes that we're having, we've also performed 4 different data center migrations for our kind of primary worldPing cluster that we have. When we started the platform, we were running on bare metal servers. We then moved to Google Cloud Platform, and then later on moved things into Google Kubernetes Engine. Later on, we then moved things again into Azure Kubernetes Engine, and then last year sometime I think we did our final migration, moving everything back into Google Kubernetes Engine again, and that's where things are still running today. And so finally, when we launched worldPing, the platform was delivered via a multi-tenant Grafana instance. This deployment model was actually one of the primary reasons why Grafana has the concept of organizations in it today. We don't think that was such a great move. We didn't end up using it very heavily because we after kind of launching with the original platform, that we realized pretty quickly that users didn't like the idea of having to go to this single Grafana instance hosted in the cloud just to use worldPing. So we got lots of feedback from customers that they really didn't want to have to start off in their kind of on-prem Grafana instance and have to flick over to another Grafana instance somewhere else to start managing their worldPing and kind of creating checks and setting things up. So so based on that feedback, we subsequently kind of rewrote the backend and split everything out. So we took what was inside a fork of Grafana, kind of with the backend and the front end all kind of mixed in together. We kind of split that out into individual components with a separate backend service, that we could kind of scale independently and run, and iterate on it without being tied directly to Grafana. And so with this model, this is also what kind of led us to to building out the app, so the plugin concept within Grafana. So we had this request from users that they wanted to be able to interact with our service from their own Grafana instance, and we expected that there was probably a number of other kind of similar use cases where users wanted to be able to kind of extend Grafana to support specific applications they had. So we kind of looked into how that could work and what we would need to do, and that's where we came up with the concept of the app plugin. And I still remember vaguely building the first proof of concept of that to demonstrate how it could work, and everything that would need to go into it to make it possible for us to kind of build these capabilities and kind of extend Grafana in new and interesting ways. And so I think that code was only around October or November of 2015 where we started that. And fortunately, after I built the proof of concept and kind of validated all the ideas that we had and proved that this model could work, luckily Torkel then kind of took over, to polish the implementation and make sure that the quality of what was going into Grafana matched the rest of Grafana's other features, and made sure that what we were going to build was going to last for a long time, because it would need to. We wouldn't have the option to be able to take it out and make significant changes. And so I think about mid 2016 is when we launched the worldPing app. So this kind of came along, not just worldPing, but kind of built out the whole capability for apps and added them to our Grafana.com website, where people could go and explore and see what different plugins and capabilities they could install into the Grafana instance. So worldPing was very a key driver for a lot of these capabilities that we have today. And so between about 2016 and 2018, there was a lot of work happening, but all in the back end, mostly just to support reliability and performance issues as the platform kept growing. But about 2 years ago, the platform was mostly stable, and since then, not much has happened. So we've scaled it up as necessary. We fix bugs as we discover them, and just keep the platform running. But other than kind of the bare essentials, we haven't really invested very heavily in any new features or new capabilities for the platform. And so for us, we've obviously been looking at that and considering what it is to do, and the time's come for us now where we think it's the right time to take a look at worldPing's future and decide what it is that we want to do. And so that brings us to the really kind of important part of today's talk, which is around the future of worldPing. So what is it that we're going to be doing? Well, what we've decided is to build out a new version of worldPing, so a reimagined version of worldPing, learning from what we did right the first time, and what went wrong, what things we think we could have done better, and kind of taking all of that experience that we have and using it to build something that's going to be much simpler for people to use. It's going to provide better capabilities and enable people to get things done more reliably and more efficiently than they do today. And so for us, we are fortunate in that it's been a long time since we first built worldPing, and a lot has changed. So both in the capabilities that Grafana has, as well as our own Grafana Cloud platform. And so one of the things that we've kind of looked at as we're building out this new platform is kind of understanding how worldPing fits in with the rest of what it is that we're doing. And we've really realized that it's not its own product. It really is just a feature of Grafana Cloud, and so that's how we're building it. And so this gives us a lot of new capabilities, and one of the, I guess, most important to a lot of our users is around how we kind of build for it. So instead of offering it as a separate product, something that you have to buy and pay for, it's just going to be part of our Grafana Cloud platform. So it'll just be billed via the metrics and logs usage that it generates. So it makes it very easy, for users, especially those that are already using Grafana Cloud and already sending their metrics and logs there. They can now just start adding in just the worldPing volume as well, and this actually will end up making it a lot cheaper than the current platform that we have today. One of the big changes that we're introducing that I'm really excited about is not just collecting metrics, but also gathering logs for every check that we're running. So we often see customers reach out to us when they do have issues with their endpoint that worldPing has alerted them about, to try and help them understand exactly what's going wrong, why their service is not working. Quite often, key thing that they want to know is, what the IP address is that the check is actually targeting. So they might, especially with customers where they have, geo-based, routing, especially for DNS, they always want to know, what IP address, their service resolved to. So we're really excited to be able to include that kind of information inside logs, so that when things do go wrong, users are going to be able to just quickly dive in, and have a look at the logs and see exactly what the check did, so what IP address it resolved to, have a look at the kind of timings for when it started requests, what it sent, when errors do happen, getting the specific error message that they're coming back, and understanding exactly what went wrong with the service itself. And so, combining the metrics and logs, just makes a lot of sense, now that we have those capabilities on Grafana Cloud. It's something that we, would like to have done, the first time around, but, we just didn't have that capability. We weren't, we didn't want to be running, a big Elasticsearch cluster or something like that to kind of store all these logs, because we just knew that it would be an operational headache. But with, the capabilities and that we have with worldPing now on Grafana Cloud, this is something that we can do, and it's, I'm really excited with the, how well it works, and kind of the level of capability that it adds to the platform. The other big change that we're introducing is, to change from, the Graphite metric backend to using a Prometheus-based backend. So using our Cortex offering on Grafana Cloud. So when we first launched, Graphite was, definitely the most popular, data source amongst Grafana users at the time. But that's definitely not the case anymore. We definitely see Prometheus has very, clearly kind of overtaken, Graphite in that popularity, and so we want to, make sure that, the metrics platform that we're using is the one that our users and customers are going to be most familiar with and most comfortable with, and we certainly see Prometheus as being, the kind of the solution that is becoming the most popular. The other really good reason for doing that is just the commonality between the Prometheus and the Loki query language. They do share a lot of commonality, and you can do things very simply and commonly. So we want to take advantage of that, and just have a kind of a consistent way of users to be able to query their data, whether it's metrics or logs. Obviously, with Prometheus and Loki themselves, they have a great tie-in within Grafana, where you can kind of switch between logs and metrics quite easily, especially when they're using consistent label names, which we'll obviously be doing. So that way, you can transition from logs and then quickly hop over and have a look at the metrics that are kind of related to that, and vice versa. When we first, with the kind of the existing worldPing platform that we have, all of the data is stored in a large, multi-tenant, reliable, Graphite compatible time series database, and so though the data is exposed as a kind of standard Graphite data source, that users can add to their Grafana instance, that specific data source will only contain their worldPing data. So, even though you can combine, that in a single dashboard or in a single panel with other with data from other data sources, it's always much easier to kind of combine your data when it's all in the same database. And so, really excited with the changes that we've got here, where for this version 2 of worldPing, users can select the Grafana Cloud metrics and logs instances that they want to have their data shipped to. So this gives them lots of flexibility, and especially when they're already sending their metrics into Grafana Cloud, they can now just start sending their worldPing data there as well. So with the change from Graphite Prometheus, as the kind of metrics store, we obviously needed to make some significant changes to the probe software, so the agent that collects all the data. So we explored a few options. We considered just rewriting what we had to update it to use the Prometheus metrics, but we ended up deciding to leverage the existing black box explorer from the Prometheus project. So at Grafana Labs, we're big believers of open source. Obviously, most of our products themselves are open source, and we invest heavily in it. But when it comes to building new products and features, we're always looking at existing open source solutions that are out there that may be suitable for what it is that we want to do. Save us having to reinvent the wheel, and certainly then we can kind of participate in those ecosystems and contribute to those code bases and communities. And so, we're really happy with the decision to use the black box explorer. It does exactly what it is that we want to do. There'll be a number of existing Prometheus users who are already experienced with the black box explorer and kind of understand the metrics that are coming out of it, may already have dashboards for it. So the new probe that we built kind of takes the black box explorer, and then we run just a small lightweight sidecar service that handles managing the configuration and scheduling checks and shipping all the data off to Grafana Cloud. So the black box explorer from a capability perspective does everything that the current worldPing probe does, plus a lot more. So in addition to some new key metrics like SSL certificate expiry times, which a lot of people have asked for, users will now also be able to create TCP-based checks. So monitor basically any TCP service, whether it's SIP endpoints or SSH services, basically anything that's on a TCP port, you'll be able to connect to, send some data, and get back a response. So this obviously complements the existing HTTP, ping, and DNS checks that are available. The black box explorer also provides a number of configuration options, and so worldPing v2 will expose most of these, just about all of them. There'll be a few that we will basically kind of limit and hide, and that's mostly just from security and kind of ensuring reliability of the service. But in general, anything that you can kind of configure in the black box explorer, you'll be able to do through worldPing. And so a lot of these capabilities are around the types of what to include in requests, so whether it's headers to add or body payload that you want to send. But there's also a lot of configuration tunables for validation. So whether it's what response code to expect, or headers to expect in the response, or whether it's matching regex or anything like that. There's a number of new kind of capabilities that are in the black box explorer that the worldPing v2 users will be able to take advantage of. And so, one thing that I really like about this is, the black box explorer, has all these capabilities, but it can be difficult to configure with just basically a big configuration file that you have to manage yourself. And so, really, what the worldPing platform turning into be is basically a graphical user interface for configuring your black box explorer and kind of scheduling where it should go and run its checks from. And so this is going to be a great way for users to kind of get that central monitoring capability set up and running. It's certainly going to be a great capability for new teams getting started with monitoring. They can start with using worldPing to have their black box monitoring and get that core level of kind of monitoring coverage that they need, while being able to kind of demonstrate the power of both Grafana and Prometheus, and Loki, and showing off Grafana Cloud and kind of how that can really help improve what teams are doing around observability and understanding of their applications. So with the original worldPing platform, it obviously predates Grafana having built-in alerting. So it was something that we had to build in to the worldPing platform itself to be able to notify users when their websites weren't working. But we've certainly seen over time that a number of the many of our worldPing users have kind of moved to using Grafana's internal alerting capabilities to be able to notify their teams when things are going wrong. And so with the new worldPing v2, this is the model that we're going to stick with. So just using Grafana, it has great capabilities around alerting. We've seen numerous requests from our existing worldPing customers around notification channels for the existing worldPing platform, which I think is limited to still just email. But obviously using Grafana, you can take advantage of the numerous notification channels that it has, for things like Slack and PagerDuty, as well as kind of like webhooks and kind of email to integrate with other services. And so, users will be able to take advantage of that. Another reason for kind of like separating the alerting component out and kind of decoupling it from worldPing itself is, also so we can take advantage of, the new capabilities that we'll be adding into Grafana Cloud. So Tom mentioned some of these yesterday on his keynote around, the kind of alerting UI that we're working on that will, work with Grafana Cloud, so you can kind of create, Prometheus style alerts and alert notifications and have them run directly in the Grafana Cloud platform. All right, and so when we chose to use Graphite as our metrics backend, we knew the limitations of it. One of the big things that that we knew we were missing out on was the flexibility to for users to be able to assign additional metadata to the metrics that they're collecting. So using labels or tags. And so, one of the benefits that we have now of transitioning to using Prometheus and Loki is that users will be able to assign these labels to their checks and to their probes and have them propagate throughout all of their metrics that they're collecting. So this will give them the ability to go and use those metrics and use those labels when they're creating dashboards or creating queries, as well as when they're creating alerts, so that they can target specific subsets of their data, and also depending on the notification channels that they're using, so such as using Prometheus Alert Manager, you'll be able to use those labels for routing of your alerts, so you can route to notifications based on a team label to make sure that when a service is not working, that the correct team is going to get notified about the problem, so they can start looking into it. So with all of the changes that we've made, this has really enabled us to build a much simpler platform for worldPing v2. So we've been able to take a lot of complexity out of the system and just move to something that's very simple, very easy for us to manage and support, but give us great capabilities. So so the platform that we had, is going to, be easier for users to use and give them, a number of improvements, but it's also going to, give us internally a number of improvements as well. So the reduced complexity obviously is going to make it much more reliable and easier for us to scale and support over time. And so, hopefully there won't be any reason for any future engineers to have to fall asleep at their computers while trying to keep things running smoothly. So hopefully we can take advantage of that and keep everybody sane and happy. All right, so let's dive into, I guess, the new platform and what it's going to look like. So, once we launch the platform, users will only really need three kind of key things to get started. So the first one is a Grafana Cloud service. So you can just sign up for this on Grafana.com. So if you don't have one, you can just go to Grafana.com and start your 30-day trial. Once they have that, users will just need to install the new worldPing app. So you can either install that directly into your hosted Grafana instance, and you'll be able to do that directly from Grafana.com, or if you're running your Grafana Cloud Grafana instance on-prem, you can install it through the GrafanaCONline tool, as with any other kind of plugin. And the third thing that you'll need to get started is an admin key from Grafana.com. So this will just be used to kind of just configure and kind of bootstrap the app, but you don't actually need to store the key. So when you get started, basically just once you've got the app installed, you just need to enable it, and then it will kind of prompt you to kind of initialize it. And this is what the admin API key is for. And this is just so that we can get a list of Grafana Cloud instances that you have, and give the option to select them and make sure that everything is configured so that you can inject the data in. So once you kind of initialize that, you'll then be prompted to select those instances. If you've got multiple metrics or logs instances, you'll be able to choose the one that you want to have the worldPing data go to. And then once you click setup, everything is kind of then taken care of you. So the data sources will be created if they don't already exist, and then we'll import a number of dashboards to give you the great level of kind of insight into your applications and services that you really need. And so once you have kind of everything installed, all that's left to do is start adding new checks and adding new endpoints that you want to monitor. And so this is pretty straightforward. We're just standard kind of form to go and build things out. So very similar to how this worked with the existing worldPing platform, if you're familiar with it. So we have some basic information that you need to populate. So around timing, so how frequently you want the check to run from each of the probe it's running on. You then select all of the different probe locations that you want to have the check run from. Then you can add your labels, so whatever makes sense for your specific services in your environment, and then you just select the type of check that you want to run. So whether it's ping, HTTP, DNS, or TCP, and then configure those based on all the config options that they need. So ping, for example, we really just only need a host name, and there's a few advanced options that we can take advantage of as well, but they're obviously very optional. And then once you've got that and saved, those checks will then start getting distributed out to all of the probe locations where they'll start running. And this will just start pushing data into your Grafana Cloud platform, and you'll be able to start visualizing this on your dashboards. So we've got some examples here. These may or may not be what we ship with the product. We'll see how we go. You may see some refinement and tuning on them, but this is kind of give you a good idea of what the application can do and what it will look like. So here we can kind of show, we're looking at ping and just HTTP here, so we can kind of see how things are running globally and in which kind of regions are having problems. We can see here that for ping specifically, we're seeing some downtime in San Jose, and then we can kind of dive into specific services to see how they're being impacted by that. And so we can see here, looking at a different time frame and looking at different endpoints, we can see some more kind of insight into sort of these kind of key performance metrics, network performance metrics that we can see for the kind of response latency. So we can kind of get our kind of average across all of our locations, and then see kind of the response from each location to kind of work out kind of the spread and distribution of latency values around the world. We obviously can kind of build on top of the map panels here to kind of again see what our kind of level of availability is for specific regions. So we can also see here that we've got the capability of to see the SSL expiry times, so we know when our certificate's going to expire. That's obviously something important. I think a big request we've had on the original worldPing platform. And then one of the really great capabilities that I love is the ability to have those logs integrated into the platform. So when you do see that errors happen, you can dive into the logs and see exactly what went wrong and what happened. So we can see here when resolving, we can see that it used IPv4, and we can see the IP address that it resolved to, and we can see the requests that happen, and see what the specific error here is. So here we can see it's just a timeout error, but we can also see the second one there where we were successfully got the start of the request, so we got the response headers back, and then timed out waiting for the rest of the request. So we can see there's definitely some kind of network issue there where things were just running really slowly, and that's what kind of led to the timeout. So there's a whole bunch of information that we can gather from the logs here, and it really does make it so much easier to understand what is happening with your application. And so again, I guess the real question now comes down to when will V2 be ready? And so we're currently in private beta, so we've got things up and running now, and we're testing it with a handful of customers and users to just kind of get some kind of initial feedback and kind of iron out all the major kinks and bugs. But we're definitely looking to have this up and running and generally available mid-June, which is a month away from today. So we've got the team working hard on that to get that done, and we should have that up and running and available for everyone to download and start using. So as I mentioned earlier, we've really kind of transitioned from worldPing being a product to it being just a feature of Grafana Cloud. And so we're really excited to be able to have this new version of worldPing out, but it's kind of really just the first step that we see around Grafana Cloud and kind of extending its capabilities. So we're excited to have worldPing out, but we're also already started looking into the next feature kind of around this domain, where it's something that users can get set up in Grafana Cloud and have it start collecting and pushing metrics and logs directly into the Grafana Cloud services. So we're looking at some new capabilities, some new services, such as scraping metrics from CloudWatch, and having them be pushed directly into Grafana Cloud, so that users can take advantage of the cost efficiencies of being able to put their data in Grafana Cloud instead of using some of these other cloud services. So that's some things we've got teed up for the future. For worldPing specifically, once we have it GA, that certainly won't be the end. We're also looking at adding some additional features and capabilities. I guess the first one that I'm keen to add in is trace routes. Now that we have support for storing log-based data and more of this data, we're looking at being able to kind of ingest that data as well, and working on some ways that we can be able to visualize that really elegantly within Grafana itself. And this kind of fits in with a lot of the work that's kind of ongoing around better support for traces within Grafana itself as well. And so we'll continue working on that and continue building out those features over time. But we're really excited to have the worldPing v2 ready next month. And so once we do have that, we'll be reaching out to all of the existing worldPing customers, and working with them to get them to start to transition to this new platform. And we'll work with them to make that easier and make sure that that process is supported and users can get across and give them time to do that. But we do see that once users have started transitioning across and onto the new platform, we'll be able to start turning down that old platform and it can have its last goodbyes. But we'll be working with all of our users to handle this transition. But we're just definitely excited to get the new V2 platform out and into everybody's hands, so they can start taking advantage of it. All right, and so that just leads us to Q&A. So thank you everyone for taking the time today, and hop in the Slack channel, and I look forward to answering everybody's questions. So again, thank you very much, and I hope everyone's enjoys it.